I told my husband, pull over, now. We were somewhere on I-25, middle of nowhere, New Mexico, desert stretching out in every direction, and I had his phone in my hand. One text from his mother changed everything. She was not planning a memorial for his father. She was planning to steal our house. And the worst part? She was not working alone. A man none of us had ever met was pulling the strings, and he had already done this to 3 other widows before her. But let me back up. Let me tell you how we got here, because this story does not start with a villain. It starts with a Saturday afternoon and a man singing Tom Petty with his sunglasses on like the world was exactly the size of our windshield. My name is Nora. I was 35 years old, sitting in the passenger seat of our Subaru Outback, somewhere between Albuquerque and Gallup, watching the desert flatten into that endless brown nothing that makes you feel like the earth forgot to finish rendering. Garrett, my husband, had both hands on the wheel and was singing along to Free Fallin' with the kind of unself-conscious joy that made me fall in love with him 7 years ago and also made me want to throw a shoe at him at least twice a week. He is a good man. He is a fire captain with the Denver Fire Department, just like his father was before him. Frank Holbrook served 30 years as a firefighter, retired as fire chief, and died of a heart attack 5 years ago on a Tuesday afternoon while watering his garden in Sedona, Arizona. He was 61. Garrett does not talk about it much. He makes pasta instead. We were driving to Sedona for the 5-year memorial. Judith, Garrett's mother, had organized the whole thing. She sent out a Canva invitation 3 weeks earlier with a clip art cactus, a sunset gradient, and the words "Family is everything" followed by a red heart emoji. I barely looked at it when it came through. Why would I? People have memorials, families gather. You bring a casserole, and you cry a little, and you drive home. But I was holding Garrett's phone because he had asked me to check the directions. We had missed a turn somewhere near Bernalillo, which is easy to do when your navigation co-pilot is more focused on harmonizing with Tom Petty than reading road signs. I opened his Maps app, and that is when I saw the text, right there at the top of his notifications, from Judith. Title company confirmed for Saturday, 3 in the afternoon. Garrett needs his ID and the last 4 of his social. Do not mention it to Nora. She will make it complicated. I read it once. Then I read it again. Then I read it a 3rd time because my brain was doing that thing where it refuses to accept information that should not exist. Now, here is the thing. Most people read that and think, okay, maybe there is a property thing. Maybe Judith is refinancing one of the cabins. Maybe it is estate paperwork. Whatever. But I have worked as a mortgage loan officer at Front Range Community Bank in Denver for 9 years. 9 years. I spend 40 hours a week looking at deeds, liens, title transfers, mortgage documents, and signature pages. I have looked at 10,000 signature pages. I know what a title company appointment at a family gathering means. It means someone is about to sign something they have not read carefully enough, surrounded by people who will pressure them into doing it. And it means they do not want a lawyer in the room. And they definitely do not want a mortgage loan officer asking questions. I looked at Garrett, his sunglasses on, his jaw relaxed, his fingers tapping the steering wheel on the downbeat. He had no idea. He thought we were driving to eat his Aunt Carmen's tamales and stand around a fire pit and say nice things about his dad. Pull over, I said. He laughed. He actually laughed. Nor, we are in the middle of nowhere. Do you need a bathroom? There is a Love's in like 20 minutes. Garrett, pull the car over right now. The singing stopped. He looked at me. He does this thing where his jaw tightens on one side, just slightly, like a muscle he cannot control. I have seen it maybe 4 times in 7 years of marriage. Once when his buddy Travis got diagnosed. Once when we lost the baby. Once when his mother called at 2 in the morning crying about the cabin roof. And now, every single time, something bad was about to follow. He pulled onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires. A semi blew past us so hard the Outback rocked on its suspension and my coffee sloshed in the cup holder. I showed him the text. He stared at it. The desert was dead quiet except for the engine ticking and the wind pushing sand across the highway in little ribbons. Then he said what people always say when they do not want to believe their mother is capable of something ugly. It is probably nothing, Nor. Maybe she is updating the trust or something. Your mother scheduled a title company appointment, told you to bring your ID and the last 4 of your social, and specifically told you not to mention it to me, that I would make it complicated. That is not a memorial, Garrett. That is a closing table. And she does not want me there because she knows I will read every single page. His jaw did the thing again. Tighter this time. Turn the car around, I said. He did not argue. He checked the mirror, pulled a U-turn on a 2-lane highway in the middle of the New Mexico desert, and we drove south in silence for 11 minutes before either of us said another word. I am not psychic. I can barely predict what I want for dinner most nights. But I know what a title search looks like. I know what a signature page looks like. And what I saw on that phone was not a family memorial invitation. That was paperwork dressed up with a Canva graphic and a cartoon cactus. My phone buzzed somewhere around mile marker 203. A text from Paige, Garrett's younger sister. She is a veterinarian in Flagstaff, Arizona. The kind of woman who sends you a birthday text a day late and then apologizes in a paragraph so long it needs a table of contents. Sweet enough, just not someone I would call in a crisis. But the text she sent me that afternoon was only 7 words. Whatever Mom asks Garrett to sign, don't let him. I texted back immediately. What do you mean sign what? Nothing. Delivered. Read. No response. I called her. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. Sent 2 more texts. Both delivered. Both read. The little blue check marks staring back at me like tiny accusations. Paige Holbrook, the woman who once left me a 4-minute voice message apologizing for forgetting to bring a side dish to Thanksgiving, could not find the time to answer a phone call about her mother potentially committing fraud. Garrett glanced at me. Who are you calling? Your sister. Paige. Why? I showed him the text. He read it and his jaw did the thing again. That was 3 times in one afternoon, a personal record I did not want to be tracking. We drove the rest of the way home without the radio on, just the road and the wind and the sound of my heartbeat doing something it should not have been doing at 73 miles an hour on a Saturday afternoon. The desert scrolled past like a screensaver nobody asked for. Brown, brown, more brown, an occasional gas station, brown. I have driven this stretch of I-25 enough times to know that the emptiness out there is the kind that gives your thoughts too much room. And my thoughts were using every square inch. Title company. Saturday at 3. Bring your ID and last 4 of your social. Do not mention it to Nora. That last part, that was the part that kept circling. Not the title company, not the ID. The deliberate decision to keep me out of it. Judith knew exactly what I do for a living. She has known for 9 years. She sat at our kitchen table the Christmas after I got promoted and said, "Oh, Nora, you must be so good with all that paperwork stuff." She said it the way people say things when they want you to feel small about something you are actually excellent at, paperwork stuff. I process 6-figure mortgage loans. I verify title chains that go back 50 years. I catch forgeries that other officers miss. But sure, paperwork stuff. And now she specifically did not want me in the room. When we pulled into our driveway in Denver, our house, our mortgage, our names on the deed, I had verified that personally 6 months ago during the refinance. I sat in the passenger seat for a full minute after Garrett turned off the engine. The neighborhood was doing its Saturday evening thing. The Kowalskis across the street were grilling something that smelled like mesquite. Their kid was riding a bike in circles on the cul-de-sac. A sprinkler was going 3 houses down, throwing lazy arcs of water across a lawn that did not need it. Everything looked normal. Everything felt like it was vibrating at a frequency only I could hear. Garrett looked at me. "Nor, talk to me." "I do not know what your mother is doing," I said, "but I am going to find out." And I meant it the way you mean something when your hands are cold and your brain is running calculations you did not ask it to run. I meant it the way you mean something when you are scared, but the scared has not caught up to the angry yet, and the angry is driving. Okay, hold on. Before I keep going, if you are listening to this and you have not subscribed yet, now is a good time. Someone in the comments last week said they were listening from a fire station in Boise at 2 a.m. during a night shift. And honestly, that made my whole week. So hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one. Thank you. Right. Where was I? The driveway, the cold hands, the angry driving. So that night, after Garrett went to bed, and he falls asleep in about 5 minutes, which is either a gift or deeply unfair depending on your perspective, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and started doing what I do best. Title searches. The memorial was supposed to be at an address on Calle de Alma in Sedona. Judith had sent it in the group text with the Canva invitation 3 weeks earlier. Clip art cactus, sunset gradient. Family is everything with the heart emoji. I typed that address into the Yavapai County Recorder's online database, and the property owner was not Judith Holbrook. It was not a restaurant. It was not a park. It was not some charming little event space with string lights and a patio. The property was owned by a woman named Brenda Cosgrove. And when I ran Brenda Cosgrove through a basic search, because I am a mortgage loan officer, not the FBI, and public records are free, she came up as a title agent operating in Yavapai County. A title agent who had been disciplined twice by the Arizona Department of Real Estate, once for improper handling of escrow funds, once for facilitating a transaction without adequate disclosure. I sat back in my chair. A disciplined title agent's private office. That is where we were driving to for a family memorial with a title company appointment at 3 p.m. and my husband's social security number in his pocket. Judith had mailed out that glittery Canva invitation to the whole family like it was a sunset cookout. She used a clip art cactus. A cactus. The woman was planning a financial ambush, and she decorated the invitation with a cartoon desert plant. I would have laughed if I had not been so nauseated. I cracked my knuckles, took a sip of sparkling water that had gone flat an hour ago, and I started pulling county records. Because if Judith was working with a disciplined title agent and did not want me in the room, then whatever she was doing with those properties Frank left behind was going to be in the public record. And public records do not lie. People lie. Documents just sit there and tell you exactly what happened if you know how to read them. I know how to read them. What I found over the next 3 hours made my sparkling water come back up. After Frank died, Judith inherited 4 properties in Sedona, 2 vacation rental cabins on Harmony Lane, 1 larger than the other, and 2 long-term rental apartments in a duplex on Painted Rock Drive. Frank had spent 30 years building that little portfolio. He bought the first cabin with cash he saved from overtime shifts at the firehouse. He financed the other 3 conservatively, 10-year notes, 20% down, fixed rates. The man kept his receipts in labeled envelopes. He had a filing cabinet in his home office organized by year, and inside each year organized by property, and inside each property organized by expense type. Garrett told me this once while we were doing our own taxes, and he said it the way you talk about a cathedral you visited as a kid, with reverence. Frank Holbrook did not gamble with money. He stacked it like bricks and built something with it. Judith was not that kind of person. In the 5 years since Frank died, she had taken out a home equity line of credit on both Harmony Lane cabins. She had refinanced the Painted Rock duplex twice. She had taken a second HELOC against the larger cabin and rolled it into a consolidation instrument that, based on the terms I could see in the county records, carried an interest rate that made my professional stomach turn. I have seen predatory lending. I have flagged it for compliance review. But this was not predatory lending. This was voluntary financial self-destruction, signed and notarized and recorded with the county like she wanted the state of Arizona to have a front row seat. The numbers were ugly. Combined secured debt across all 4 properties was $520,000. The estimated market value, generously, was maybe $780,000. And that was if you ignored the deferred maintenance, which I could see in the Google Street View photos I pulled up at 1:17 in the morning while sitting at my kitchen table in my pajamas like some kind of forensic accountant who had given up on sleep and personal dignity. Simultaneously. The larger cabin on Harmony Lane had a section of roof covered with a blue tarp. The smaller one had a cracked front window that had been patched with what looked like packing tape. The duplex on Painted Rock Drive had a front yard that suggested nobody had introduced it to a lawnmower since the previous administration. 5 years. She had bled 3 decades of Frank's work almost dry in 5 years. But the number that stopped me cold was not the debt. It was the gap. $280,000 had been pulled out of those properties over 5 years. I could trace where some of it went. Mortgage payments, property taxes, some of them late. An $11,000 insurance premium that suggested she had let the policy lapse and had to reinstate at a penalty rate. A contractor lien for $15,800 filed by a plumber in Sedona 8 months ago and never resolved. There is always a plumbing situation. But roughly $280,000 had gone somewhere I could not trace from the county recorder's database. Somewhere off the books. Somewhere that was not maintenance, was not taxes, was not mortgage payments. I found part of the answer at 1:39 in the morning. A business entity registered with the Arizona Corporation Commission called Sedona Serenity Wellness Retreat, LLC. Judith Holbrook was listed as a member. The other member was a name I did not recognize. A man. The LLC had been formed 22 months ago. It had no website, no business license with the city of Sedona. No presence anywhere except a glossy Facebook page with stock photos of women doing yoga on red rocks and a tagline that read, "Healing begins where the desert meets the soul." I have been in banking for 9 years. I have seen 100 business plans. The ones that have stock photos and inspirational taglines instead of revenue projections and operating agreements are never the ones that work. They are the ones that take your money and give you a lesson. $280,000 into a wellness retreat LLC with a Facebook page and a mystery business partner and no evidence of a single paying customer. I closed my laptop at 2:13 in the morning. The kitchen was dark except for the light above the stove. I could hear Garrett snoring down the hall, that steady rhythm that meant he was in deep sleep, the kind where you could set off a car alarm in the bedroom and he would just roll over and mumble something about needing new brake pads. I could hear the refrigerator humming, that specific hum it makes when the compressor kicks on. That low rattle that sounds like it is thinking about quitting but decides to give it one more day. I understood the feeling. I sat there and I stared at the wall. The same wall where we hung a framed photo from our wedding, Garrett dipping me on the dance floor while Judith watched from the head table with tears running down her face. She had clinked her champagne glass and given a toast that made everyone cry. She called me sweetheart. She said Garrett had found his forever. She said Frank would have loved me. And now she was $520,000 in debt, hemorrhaging money into a phantom wellness retreat, and she had invited her son to a memorial that was actually a title company appointment where she needed his ID and his social security number for reasons she specifically did not want me to know about. This woman slow danced with me at our wedding. She held my face in both hands and said, "Welcome to the family." And now she was trying to use our home to bail herself out of a financial crater she had spent 5 years digging. I stood up. My left knee buckled because I had been sitting so long my leg had fallen asleep, and I stumbled into the bathroom like a woman who had been drinking. Except the only thing I had consumed in 4 hours was flat, sparkling water and a growing sense of dread. Glamorous, right? I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Hair in a knot, pajama shirt inside out, eyes that looked like they belonged to someone who had just read something they could never unread. Tomorrow, I was going to sit across from my husband at the same kitchen table, and I was going to break something that could not be fixed with pasta and red sauce. The next morning was a Sunday. Garrett made pasta. Of course he made pasta. Penne with marinara sauce and garlic bread from a frozen loaf he found in the back of the freezer behind a bag of edamame neither of us remembered buying. Garrett Holbrook's answer to every problem on earth is pasta with red sauce. Bad day at the station, pasta. Argument about whose turn it is to clean the gutters, pasta. Wife discovers your mother is $500,000 in debt and funneling money into a phantom wellness retreat, pasta with extra garlic bread. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had been up until 2 in the morning, uncovering his mother's financial wreckage. It still had the ring from my sparkling water bottle. I could see it there next to the salt shaker like a little ghost of evidence. He asked me if I wanted to talk about it. Yes, I said, but first I need you to log into our bank account on your phone. He looked at me like I had asked him to perform open-heart surgery with a butter knife. Why? Just please. He did. I told him to scroll through the checking account transactions and look for anything labeled equipment maintenance. It took him about 10 seconds. His fork stopped moving. It just hovered there above his plate with a piece of penne hanging off the end like it was waiting for permission to fall. "Those are mine," he said quietly. "I know they are yours. $900 every month." "For how long, Garrett?" He put the fork down. The penne finally fell. It landed in the sauce and made a tiny splash that neither of us acknowledged. "Since about a year and a half ago. Maybe a little longer." She said the cabins were having a rough year, and she needed help with some repairs. She said she would pay it back. She made me promise not to tell you because she said you would overreact. 16 months. I had already counted. $14,400 pulled from our joint checking account in 16 identical withdrawals of $900 each, every single one labeled equipment maintenance, like he was buying brake pads for a fleet of imaginary fire trucks. And here is where I need to be honest with you, because this is the part that makes me look bad. I already knew about the withdrawals before I sat him down. I had found them the night before while I was pulling financial records like a woman possessed. I could have asked him calmly. I could have approached this like a rational adult with a glass of orange juice and a measured tone. Instead, I let him discover them on his own phone, in his own hands, while sitting across from me eating pasta, because I wanted to see his face. I wanted to know if he had been hiding it on purpose, or if he had convinced himself it did not count, because his mother asked nicely and said please, and called him sweetheart, and told him his father would have wanted him to help. I am not proud of it. Okay, maybe a little. His face told me everything. He looked like a kid caught shoplifting at a CVS. Not malicious, not calculated, just ashamed. The kind of shame that comes from knowing you did something wrong but telling yourself it was not that wrong because the person who asked you to do it was your mother, and mothers do not lie to their sons. Except sometimes they do. She said things were getting tight with the properties, he said. She said she would pay it back. She said it was temporary. 16 months is not temporary, Garrett. Temporary is borrowing a cup of sugar. Temporary is crashing on someone's couch for a weekend. 16 months of $900 a month from our joint checking account is a pattern. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. She made me promise not to worry you about it, he said. She said you would overreact. Overreact. I repeated the word the way you repeat a word when you are deciding whether to throw a plate or take a breath. I could feel both options sitting in my chest like two doors, and I was standing in the hallway with my hand raised. I took the breath, barely. Garrett, your mother has $520,000 in secured debt on properties worth maybe $780,000. She has been hemorrhaging equity for 5 years. She put $280,000 into a wellness retreat LLC that has no customers, no revenue, and no real address. There is a plumber in Sedona she owes $15,800 to. This is not a rough year. This is not tight. This is a crater. And you have been shoveling our money into it for 16 months without telling me. He stared at me. I watched his face go through something I do not have a word for. Shock is too simple. Grief is too clean. It was more like watching someone realize that the floor they have been standing on is not a floor at all. It is a lid. And underneath it is something they have been refusing to look at. I did not know it was that bad, he said. Well, now you do. We did not fight. Not exactly. What happened was worse than a fight. It was that silence where you are both sitting 3 feet apart and the distance feels like a canyon. Where the pasta is getting cold and the garlic bread is sitting there untouched and the Sunday morning sunlight is coming through the kitchen window like it does not know what it walked into. He cleared the plates. I went to the bedroom and closed the door and sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the carpet for 20 minutes. This has nothing to do with anything, but the carpet in our bedroom has a stain near the closet from when I spilled an entire mug of coffee during a Zoom call in 2023. I knocked it over reaching for a pen and just watched it spread into the carpet like it was making a statement. I never cleaned it properly. It looks a little like Texas. I stared at that stain like it owed me money. I memorized the panhandle. I was not just angry at Judith anymore. I was angry at Garrett, my husband, the man who turned the car around without hesitation when I told him to, the man who trusted me on the highway without a single question, but who had been lying to me about $900 a month for 16 months. That is the thing about betrayal that nobody prepares you for. It does not come from one direction. It comes from everywhere at once. And the hits from the people you love hurt worse than the hits from the people you do not. Monday morning, 6:45. Thump Coffee on Larimer Street in downtown Denver. I was already in a booth with 2 large drip coffees, both black because this was not a vanilla latte kind of morning, and a folder full of county records I had printed at the FedEx on Broadway the night before. The FedEx employee, a college kid with a nose ring and headphones around his neck, had watched me print 47 pages of Yavapai County property records at 11:30 on a Sunday night and said, "You doing okay?" I said, "I am doing research." He said, "At 11:30 on a Sunday?" I said, "The research does not care what day it is." He gave me a 10% discount. I think it was a pity discount. I took it. Jess Martinez slid into the booth across from me at 6:51. She looked at the folder, looked at my face, looked at the 2 coffees, and said, "Oh, this is going to be something." Jess is the senior loan processor at Front Range Community Bank. She has been doing this work for 18 years. She started when loan files still came in physical folders the size of phone books, and fax machines were considered cutting-edge technology. There is not a lien, a title defect, or a suspicious closing document on this planet that Jess Martinez cannot find. She reads documents the way some people read novels. Sideways, with her head tilted, one hand tapping the table like she is counting beats in a song only she can hear. She once caught a fraudulent title transfer by noticing that the notary stamp was 0.3 millimeters too far to the left. 0.3 millimeters. I asked her how she spotted that, and she said, "It just looked wrong." She is either the best loan processor in Colorado or a human microscope. Possibly both. I told her everything. The Saturday drive, the text from Judith, the title company appointment, the address that led to Brenda Cosgrove, a twice-disciplined title agent, the 4 properties Frank built over 30 years, the HELOCs and refinances, and the $520,000 in secured debt, the $280,000 that vanished into a wellness retreat LLC with a Facebook page and a stock photo of a woman doing yoga on a red rock, the contractor lien from the plumber, the $900 a month Garrett had been sending for 16 months. Jess listened with that expression she gets when she is reading a title abstract, and something does not add up. Mouth slightly open, eyes narrowed, one hand tapping the table. When I finished, she took a long sip of coffee, set the cup down, and said the thing I already knew but needed to hear from someone who was not me. "Your mother-in-law is underwater and she is trying to drag your house down with her." That is exactly what I think. Jess pulled the folder toward her and started flipping through the printouts, page by page, tilting her head at that angle. She stopped on the HELOC documents for the larger cabin on Harmony Lane and ran her finger down the terms. "She pulled $185,000 against this one alone," she said. "At what rate?" 7.8 adjustable. Jess made a sound that was somewhere between a whistle and a prayer. She flipped to the painted rock duplex refinance. Then the second HELOC on the smaller cabin. Then the contractor lien from the plumber. $15,800 for plumbing work, she said. Filed 8 months ago. Never resolved. Was the work done? I have no idea. Jess set the papers down. There is always a plumbing situation, she said, like this was a universal law she had discovered through decades of fieldwork. Then she looked at me. Okay, so she is leveraged past the gills. The properties are generating maybe enough rental income to cover the existing mortgages if the cabins are fully booked, which based on that tarp on the roof situation, they probably are not. She pulled $280,000 out and put it into a business entity with someone. Who is the other member on that LLC? I do not know. The filing just lists a name. A man. I could not find anything on him. No LinkedIn, no professional license, no business history in Arizona. Jess stared at me over her coffee. A business partner with no footprint. That is either someone who is very private or someone who does not want to be found. And in my experience, the second one is more common. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Where did $280,000 go, Nora? Because it did not go into those properties. Look at them. That money did not buy a single new roof shingle. Somebody has it. And whoever has it is not your mother-in-law." That sentence sat between us on the table like a third cup of coffee nobody ordered. "So what is the play with your house?" Jess asked. "What does she need Garrett for?" "I think it is a quitclaim deed. I think she wants to add herself to our deed as a joint tenant. From there, she could leverage our property to consolidate or extend her debt. She would effectively own a piece of our house without having paid a single dollar toward it. At a title agent's private office, with no independent counsel, surrounded by family at a memorial for her dead husband. Yes. Jess leaned back. Her chair creaked. She took another sip of coffee and set it down with the precision of someone placing a chess piece. "Honey," she said, "that is not just shady. That is architecture. She built a whole building around this. The invitation, the memorial angle, the emotional pressure of doing it on the anniversary of Frank's death, the family around to make it feel normal. The title agent who has already been disciplined and probably does not ask too many questions. This was not a desperate decision she made last Tuesday. She has been planning this. I know. Do you know if the quitclaim deed has already been filed? That is what I need to find out." "Be careful how you ask," Jess said. If that title agent is as compromised as her discipline record suggests, she might tip Judith off the second someone comes asking questions. I nodded. I knew she was right. I also knew I was going to call anyway, because the only thing worse than tipping off your mother-in-law is not knowing whether she has already filed paperwork that gives her a legal claim to your home. I finished my coffee. It was cold. It tasted like determination and bad decisions. Jess tapped the table one last time. "You know what you are doing," she said. "Just do not do it alone." I walked to my car in the parking lot. The morning was sharp, that thin Colorado air that smells like pine and gasoline and ambition. I sat behind the wheel with my phone in my hand. The contact for Brenda Cosgrove's title office was already pulled up. My thumb hovered over the call button. I knew this could be a mistake. I called anyway. I have a voice I use at work. Every loan officer has one. It is calm, efficient, slightly bored. It says I do this 14 times a day, and I would appreciate it if we could keep this under 7 minutes. It is the voice that gets title companies to return calls, appraisers to move deadlines, and underwriters to stop asking for the same document they already have. I have spent 9 years perfecting this voice. It is, without exaggeration, one of my most valuable professional tools. I used it now. "Hi, I am calling regarding a deed filing for Garrett Holbrook, Holbrook. I am his wife, calling on his behalf." The woman who answered the phone paused. It was not a long pause, maybe 2 seconds. But I have been on enough calls to know the difference between a pause that means, "Let me look that up," and a pause that means, "I need to decide how much to tell you." "Are you listed as an authorized party on this transaction?" "I am calling to verify that." Another pause, longer this time. I could hear a keyboard in the background. Then she said, "Ma'am, I can tell you that we have a pending quitclaim deed draft involving Mr. Holbrook's name, but I am not able to discuss the details without him present with valid identification." Pending quitclaim deed. I felt my stomach drop the way it does when you are on a roller coaster and the car tips over the first hill, except this was not a roller coaster and there was no safety bar and the hill went all the way down. A pending quitclaim deed meant the document existed. It had been drafted. It was sitting in a file somewhere in Brenda Cosgrove's office waiting for Garrett's signature. Judith had not just been thinking about doing this. She had already set the table. The only thing missing was my husband's hand holding the pen. I kept my voice even. "Can you tell me when the draft was initiated?" "I really am not able to share that information over the phone. I would recommend Mr. Holbrook visit the office in person if he has questions about any pending documents." "Is there anything else I can help you with?" "No. Thank you for your time." I hung up and sat in my car with both hands on the steering wheel. The engine was off. The parking lot was filling up with the morning shift at our bank. I could see people walking past with their travel mugs and their lanyards and their Monday faces. Dana from processing walked past my window and waved. I waved back with a hand that felt like it belonged to someone else. She was not just adding her name to our mailbox, she was adding herself to our deed. A quitclaim deed would make Judith a joint tenant on our home in Denver. Our home, the one Garrett and I bought 4 years ago. The one we refinanced 6 months ago at 3.7 to 5% because I timed the rate perfectly and I was unreasonably proud of that. The one with the coffee stain shaped like Texas, and the garage door that sticks when it is humid, and the kitchen table that had become my command center for investigating my mother-in-law. From a joint tenancy position, Judith could leverage our property. She could use it as collateral. She could borrow against it. She could, in the worst-case scenario, force a sale. She was not trying to visit our house. She was trying to own it. I have spent 9 years processing mortgage loans for other people's homes. 9 years verifying that signatures are authentic, that titles are clean, that nobody is being cheated. I catch the fraud. I flag the forgeries. I protect the buyers. It never occurred to me, not once in 9 years, that someone was trying to steal mine. Is that not something? The cobbler's children have no shoes. The mortgage officer's house has no protection. I sat in that parking lot for 6 more minutes. I watched a pigeon walk across the hood of the Honda Civic next to me with the confidence of something that has never once worried about a quitclaim deed. I envied that pigeon. I wanted to be that pigeon. Just walking across warm metal in the morning sun without a care in the world. Instead, I was a 35-year-old woman in a Subaru Outback with 189,000 miles on it, discovering that her mother-in-law had drafted paperwork to steal her house. There is no Hallmark card for this. The call was a mistake. I realized it about 40 minutes later when Jess stopped by my desk and leaned over the cubicle wall with that expression she gets when she has bad news and is trying to figure out how to deliver it without causing a cardiac event. Hey, small thing. If that receptionist logs your call and Judith is listed as the initiating party on that quitclaim deed, she might get notified that someone was asking questions. My stomach flipped. You think she would tell Judith? She would not have to. Some title offices have automated systems that flag inquiries on pending documents, especially small operations, especially ones run by title agents who have already been disciplined and are probably covering their tracks on everything. I stared at my computer screen. I had 3 loan files open that I had not touched since Friday. Borrowers waiting for me to verify their title chains while my own title chain was being hijacked in another state. I just rang the doorbell and ran, I said, and now the person inside might know someone was on their porch. Jess looked at me. She did not say I told you so. Jess is not that kind of person. What she said was, so what did you learn? And that was the thing. The call was a mistake, but it was also the crack that let the light in. Because here is what I learned. The quitclaim deed was real. It was pending. It was drafted and ready to be signed. Judith had not just been hoping to get Garrett's signature at the memorial. She had already prepared the document. She had already engaged a title agent. The only thing between Judith Holbrook and a legal claim on our home was Garrett's signature on a Saturday afternoon surrounded by family who would have smiled and said, "Is that not nice?" Judith is finally getting her affairs in order. I opened a new folder on my desktop, named it Sedona, all capitals. I started organizing everything I had. County records, HELOC documents, LLC filings, contractor lien, the quitclaim deed confirmation from the phone call, the $900 withdrawals, Brenda Cosgrove's discipline history, the mystery business partner, all of it. Jess leaned over the cubicle wall one more time. You okay? I am building a file, I said. She smiled. That is my girl. The file was getting thick, but there was a hole in it, a big one. I could trace the debt. I could trace the properties. I could trace the quitclaim deed, but I still could not trace where $280,000 went. I could not identify the business partner, and I could not prove what I suspected in my gut, but did not yet have the paper to back up. I needed to go to Arizona. I needed to walk into the Yavapai County Recorder's office and pull every recorded document on those 4 properties with my own hands. Tomorrow. I was going tomorrow. Tuesday morning, I called my supervisor at 6:55 and told her I had a plumbing emergency at home. I do not love lying. I am not good at it. My face does things when I lie, which is why I was grateful this was a phone call. But I need to drive 10 hours to the Yavapai County Recorder's office to investigate my mother-in-law for potential real estate fraud did not feel like a conversation I wanted to have before 7 in the morning on a Tuesday. So plumbing emergency it was. I even touched my jaw for emphasis while I said it, which is ridiculous because she could not see me. But apparently, I am the kind of person who method acts for a sick call. If this whole mortgage thing does not work out, maybe I have a future in community theater. The drive from Denver to Prescott, Arizona, where the Yavapai County Recorder's office is located, is about 10 hours if you do not stop. It is about 10 hours and 25 minutes if you stop at a gas station in Walsenburg because you forgot to eat breakfast and end up buying a bag of trail mix and a blue Gatorade like a college sophomore on a road trip to a Music 5-1 festival. Except the festival is a government records office. And the headliner is fraud. The trail mix was stale. The raisins had that leathery quality that suggested they had been sitting on that shelf since before the pandemic. I ate them anyway with the grim determination of a woman on a mission. Every stale peanut was fuel. Every waxy chocolate chip was motivation. I was not going to let a bag of expired snacks slow me down when my mother-in-law was out here forging deeds and decorating fraud invitations with cartoon cacti. I drove south on I-25 through Colorado Springs and Trinidad, then west on I-40 through New Mexico, then south again on Route 69 into Prescott. 10 hours of highway and desert, and my brain doing math I never wanted to do. I passed the same stretch of I-25 where Garrett and I had turned around 3 days earlier. The same brown desert, the same flat nothing. Except now I was alone and the passenger seat had a folder on it instead of a husband, and the only sound was the wind and a podcast about financial crimes that I turned off after 20 minutes because I was living a financial crime and did not need the entertainment. I got to the Yavapai County Recorder's office in Prescott at 11:50 in the morning. It is one of those government buildings that smells like carpet cleaner and fluorescent lighting and the collective patience of every person who has ever waited in a line that does not move. The kind of building where time operates differently, like it made a deal with the universe to run 15% slower inside these walls. There was a woman at the front counter with reading glasses on a beaded chain and a crossword puzzle folded next to her keyboard. She looked at me over the top of her glasses the way a librarian looks at someone who just walked in with a coffee they are not supposed to have. Except I did not have a coffee. I had trail mix breath and a 10-hour drive in my bones and a look on my face that probably said I have seen things. I need to pull recorded documents on 4 properties, I said. She studied me for a moment. You know how to use the system? I do this for a living. She looked mildly impressed. Or possibly annoyed. With government employees, it is sometimes hard to distinguish between the two because both expressions involve the same amount of blinking. She waved me toward a terminal in the corner. I spent the next 3 hours pulling every recorded document on Judith's 4 Sedona properties: deeds, mortgages, HELOCs, lien releases, assignments, amendments, reconveyances. Everything the county had digitized, which in Yavapai County is actually quite a lot because Arizona got on the digital records train earlier than most states, and I silently thanked whatever county clerk had made that decision in 2006 or whenever it happened. And I printed it all, every page, because I am the kind of person who needs paper in her hands to think. There is something about holding a document, feeling the weight of it, running your finger along a signature line that a screen cannot replicate. My printer at home was going to need therapy after this. The recorder's office printer probably already had a therapist on retainer. Most of what I found was what I expected. The original deeds in Frank's name, recorded when he bought each property over a span of 20 years. The transfer deeds to Judith after his death, clean and proper, filed by what appeared to be a competent estate attorney. Then the slow unraveling. The first HELOC on the larger Harmony Lane cabin. The second HELOC on the smaller one. The refinance on the Painted Rock duplex, the second refinance on the same duplex 18 months later at worse terms. Each document another brick removed from the foundation. Frank spent 3 decades building. The contractor lien from the plumber was there too, $15,800, filed by a company called Red Rock Plumbing and Mechanical. The lien was attached to the smaller cabin on Harmony Lane. Based on the filing, the work had been completed but never paid for. 8 months, sitting there unresolved like a bill stuck to a refrigerator door that everyone walks past and pretends not to see. I was on page 31 of my printouts. 3 hours into my search, a cold Gatorade from the vending machine sweating onto the table next to my elbow when I found it. A deed transfer on the larger cabin on Harmony Lane, the big one, the one closer to the creek, the one Frank bought first with cash from overtime shifts at the firehouse. $185,000. Transfer of partial interest from Judith Holbrook to a business entity, dated 14 months ago, recorded with Yavapai County. And at the bottom of the signature page, right there in black ink on a photocopied form, 2 signatures, Judith Holbrook and Garrett Holbrook. Except the second signature was not Garrett's. I knew it the way I knew my own name, the way I knew the sound of our garage door sticking in the humidity, the way I knew that the coffee stain on our bedroom carpet looks like Texas. I knew it because I had spent 9 years looking at signatures and I had spent 7 years married to the man whose name was on that page, and I had sat next to him 6 months ago while he signed 47 pages of our refinance documents, and I watched every single stroke of his pen. That was not his handwriting. Now I know what you are thinking. How can you be sure? People's signatures vary. Maybe he signed it in a hurry. Maybe he was having an off day. Maybe his hand was tired. Here is how I am sure. In September of 2022, Garrett responded to a structure fire at an apartment complex on Colfax Avenue. 3rd floor, fully involved. He was leading the interior attack team when a section of ceiling collapsed and a burning joist came down across his right hand. He kept his grip on the hose line, because he is Garrett and Garrett does not let go of things, but the joist crushed his right index finger. Partial tendon tear. He was in a splint for 5 weeks. The department put him on light duty, which for Garrett was a punishment worse than the injury itself, because light duty meant sitting at a desk, filling out incident reports instead of running into buildings, and Garrett Holbrook was not built for desk work. He was built for carrying people down ladders. After the splint came off and the physical therapy ended, his handwriting changed. Not dramatically. If you saw one signature before and one after, you might not notice. But if you had seen hundreds of his signatures before and after, which I had, because we refinanced our house 6 months ago, and I sat next to him at our kitchen table while he signed 47 pages of mortgage documents, and I watched every single pen stroke, because that is who I am as a person, you would notice. The G in Garrett got tighter after the injury. The loop closed about 30% more than it used to. The K at the end of Holbrook lost its tail. Before the injury, the K had a confident downward stroke that extended below the baseline. After, it stopped short. His whole hand moved differently because the grip pressure changed. The index finger that used to guide the pen now deferred to the middle finger, and the result was a signature that was subtly but consistently altered in ways that were invisible to anyone who was not looking for them. I was looking for them. I am always looking for them. That is my job. The signature on that deed transfer had the old G, the wide open loop. It had the old K with the long tail that dipped below the line. It had the old grip pressure, heavier on the downstrokes, more confident in the curves. Pre-injury handwriting. The handwriting of a man with 2 fully functional index fingers. The deed transfer was dated 14 months after the injury. Judith forged his signature. She sat down somewhere. Her kitchen table, her home office, the passenger seat of her champagne Lexus, and she pulled out a document she had seen her son sign a dozen times over the years, and she practiced his old handwriting, and she wrote his name on a $185,000 deed transfer like she was filling out a birthday card. My hands stopped shaking, which was strange because you would think this would be the moment they would start. You would think discovering that your mother-in-law committed a felony using your husband's name would trigger some kind of physical response. Trembling, nausea, the urge to call someone and scream into the phone. But something shifted. The fear left and the math arrived. The emotion stepped aside and the training took over. I was not a daughter-in-law sitting in a county office feeling betrayed. I was a mortgage loan officer looking at a forged instrument on a recorded document, and I knew exactly what that meant. This was a felony in the state of Arizona, a Class 6 felony to be specific, forgery of a recorded real estate instrument, punishable by up to 2 years in state prison. This was not a family disagreement about money anymore. This was not a mother who was bad with finances. This was not a rough patch, or a temporary situation, or whatever other euphemism Judith had been wrapping around her decisions like gift paper on a bomb. This was a crime. I made copies of everything, 14 pages, paid $9.20 at the counter. The crossword puzzle woman gave me a receipt without looking up from 17 across. I wanted to tell her that I had just discovered evidence of a felony committed by my mother-in-law against my husband, and that the document was recorded in her county and filed in her system and sitting in her database, but she seemed very focused on her puzzle, and I did not want to interrupt what was clearly a productive afternoon. I walked out of the Yavapai County Recorder's office at 3:15 in the afternoon. The Arizona sun hit me like a wall. Prescott sits at about 5,000 feet elevation, so it was not Sedona hot, but it was still the kind of heat that reminds you that the desert does not care about your problems. The desert was here before your mother-in-law committed fraud, and it will be here long after. I drove home with the windows down because the air conditioning in my Subaru Outback works when it feels like it, and after 189,000 miles, it mostly does not feel like it. It has opinions. It makes decisions. Sometimes it blows cold air for 20 minutes and then switches to what I can only describe as warm suggestions. I have stopped fighting it. We have an understanding. 10 hours of hot desert wind and stale trail mix breath and my brain running calculations I did not ask it to run. I drove back through New Mexico on I-40, then north on I-25, past the same stretch of highway where this whole thing started 3 days ago. The same brown desert, the same flat nothing, but everything was different now because I had 14 pages in a folder on the passenger seat that proved my mother-in-law was a felon. I got home at 1:30 in the morning. Garrett was asleep. Of course he was. 5 minutes flat every single night. Like his brain has an off switch, mine was never issued. I put the folder in the trunk of the Subaru, Not in the house, not on the kitchen table, not anywhere Judith could find it if she decided to make another unannounced visit. The trunk of my car with 189,000 miles and broken air conditioning and a rear bumper sticker that says I brake for open houses, which was a joke gift from Jess 2 Christmases ago that I never peeled off because honestly, it is accurate. I went inside. I set my keys on the counter. I drank a glass of water standing at the sink in the dark. And then I heard a sound that made every hair on the back of my neck stand up. A car pulling into the driveway. At 1:30 in the morning, headlights sweeping across the kitchen window. Not Garrett. Garrett was in bed. I looked through the window, and my heart stopped. A champagne Lexus RX, Judith's car, parked in my driveway at 1:30 in the morning. I did not move for about 10 seconds, which does not sound like a long time until you are standing in your dark kitchen at 1:30 in the morning, staring at your mother-in-law's car in your driveway. Sedona is 10 hours away. She would have had to leave at 3:30 in the afternoon to get here now, roughly 2 hours after I arrived at the Yavapai County Recorder's office. She knew. Something tipped her off. Maybe Brenda's office logged an inquiry. Maybe the title company receptionist mentioned my call. Whatever it was, she drove 10 hours through the night to show up unannounced at my house. The woman does not knock during daylight hours. She certainly was not going to knock now. I heard the back door open. The creak of the hinge I had been asking Garrett to fix for 4 months. Footsteps in the mudroom. The kitchen light clicked on, and there she was. Judith Holbrook, 66 years old, silver hair pulled back. Turquoise cardigan over a white blouse like she was arriving for brunch and not breaking into her son's house in the middle of the night. She was carrying a cast-iron pot, the kind that weighs 15 pounds and could double as a defensive weapon. She saw me standing there and did not flinch. Not a flicker of surprise. Nora, sweetheart, I was in the area. She was not in the area. Sedona is 10 hours from Denver. The International Space Station is closer to being in the area than Sedona is at 1:30 in the morning. I brought green chili stew, she said, holding up the pot. Frank's recipe, the one he made on Sundays after his shift at the firehouse. The one that simmered 3 hours and filled the whole house with roasted green chili and cumin and slow-cooked pork. Judith learned it from him. She made it every year on his birthday, every year on the anniversary of his death, and apparently also when she needed to conduct reconnaissance on her daughter-in-law in the middle of the night. The smell hit me before I could stop it. Not the stew, the memory. The first time I tasted it was at Judith's table in Sedona 2 months after Garrett and I got engaged. Frank was still alive, standing at the stove, stirring with a wooden spoon that had a burn mark on the handle. He looked at me and said, "If you can handle this stew, you can handle this family." And he laughed. And Judith laughed. And Garrett squeezed my hand under the table. Frank died 11 months later. I wanted to throw that memory out of my head. I could not afford it. Not with the woman who forged her son's signature standing in my kitchen smiling at me like nothing was wrong. "Oh, Judith, that is so sweet," I said. My voice sounded normal, which terrified me because it meant I was either a better actress than I thought or so far past normal emotions that my body had switched to autopilot. I put the stew in the refrigerator, poured 2 glasses of iced tea because my hands needed something to do that was not shaking. We sat at the kitchen table, my command center, the table where I had mapped her financial wreckage. The table where Garrett discovered the $900 withdrawals. This table deserved hazard pay. Judith settled in like she owned the place. 7 years of marriage, and this woman has never once treated our home like someone else's space. She opens cabinets without asking. She rearranges dish towels. She once moved our coffee maker because she said the feng shui was wrong. I moved it back. She moved it again next visit. We have been in a silent coffee maker war for 3 years. "We missed you at the memorial," she said. "Everyone was asking about you and Garrett." Garrett was not feeling well. Stomach thing. "Oh no, he should call me more. I worry about him." "You worry about his signature," I thought, but what I said was, "I will tell him." She asked about work. She asked about my mother in Portland. She complimented the new curtains I bought at West Elm 4 months ago that she had somehow never noticed until tonight. 45 minutes. We talked for 45 minutes about curtains and weather and her neighbor's dog and a recipe for lemon bars. 45 minutes of small talk while 14 pages documenting her felony sat in the trunk of my Subaru 20 feet away. She was warm, attentive, interested in every detail of my life. which is exactly how Judith is when she wants something. She does not turn on the charm for recreation. She turns it on when she needs the room to trust her. When she needs you to lower your guard and pick up a pen. She left at 2:15. I watched the champagne Lexus back out of the driveway and turn left on Colfax. I watched the taillights disappear. I closed the back door, locked it, locked the deadbolt, put the chain on for the first time since we moved in. I stood in the kitchen alone. The iced tea glasses in the sink, the stew in the refrigerator, the evidence in the trunk, and I was standing in my own house at 2:20 in the morning, feeling like a stranger in a room I had lived in for 4 years. I went to the garage, opened the trunk, looked at the folder sitting there between a reusable grocery bag and an ice scraper. I needed to put it somewhere safer. Not the kitchen table. Judith had just been sitting there. Not the bedroom. Garrett might find it before I was ready. My eyes landed on the chest freezer in the corner. The one we bought when Garrett went through his phase of buying meat in bulk from a ranch in Fort Collins because a guy at the station said it was cheaper. The freezer was mostly empty now, except for about 4 pounds of elk burger we were never going to eat, and a bag of frozen edamame that had been in there so long it qualified for a senior citizen discount. I opened the freezer, put the folder inside, right on top of the elk burger. I do not know why. It was the closest thing with a door and a lid. The oven was too obvious. A cabinet was too accessible. The freezer felt like a plot twist even I did not see coming. I closed the lid. A woman in her pajamas at 2:25 in the morning, hiding felony evidence in a chest freezer on top of elk burger she was never going to cook. This was my life now. It hit me all at once. Not in the garage with the freezer. Not during the 45 minutes of small talk. It hit me 20 minutes later, standing in the hallway outside our bedroom, listening to Garrett snore through the closed door, still wearing the same clothes I had driven 20 hours in. It was not the fraud. It was not the forgery. It was not even the $14,400, or the phantom wellness retreat, or the quitclaim deed waiting in a disciplined title agent's office. It was the totality of it, the whole awful shape of what this woman had done and who she had been before she did it. Judith held my hand when I had the car accident last year. It was nothing dramatic. A guy in a pickup ran a red light on Colorado Boulevard and clipped my driver's side door hard enough to spin the Subaru into a light pole. I got whiplash bad enough for 3 weeks of physical therapy. Garrett called his mother from the emergency room, and Judith drove 10 hours from Sedona the next morning. She cooked meals. She drove me to my PT appointments because I could not turn my neck far enough to check my mirrors. She sat on our couch and watched cooking shows with me and handed me ice packs without being asked. She was the first person at the hospital when I had the miscarriage 18 months ago. Not Garrett. He was on a call. A 3-alarm warehouse fire on the north side. His phone was in his locker. Judith somehow knew before he did. She was in the waiting room when I came out of the exam room. She had been sitting there for 5 hours. She brought soup every day for a week afterward. Green chili chicken from a place on 89A in Sedona. She drove it down herself. 10 hours each way to bring me soup. She held me while I cried on her couch. She stroked my hair and whispered, "It is going to be okay, sweetheart," over and over until I believed her. The same hands that stroked my hair practiced my husband's signature on a sheet of paper. The same woman who drove 20 hours round trip to bring me soup was now driving 10 hours in the middle of the night to check whether I had discovered her felony. How do you hold both of those things in your head at the same time? How do you reconcile the woman who stroked your hair with the woman who forged your husband's name? I have been asking myself that question for weeks now, and I still do not have an answer. I do not think I ever will. I sat on the bathroom floor. I pressed a towel over my mouth so Garrett would not hear me. The tiles were cold. The grout needed recaulking. I noticed this while crying because apparently my brain processes home improvement observations during emotional breakdowns. Useful information. Filing that away for future reference. I cried for about 20 minutes. Not loud crying, the kind where your shoulders shake and your breath comes in these hitching little gasps that sound like a broken engine trying to turn over. The kind where you are not even sure what specific thing you are crying about because it is all of it, all at once. Every Thanksgiving where she raised a glass. Every Christmas where she said family like it was a prayer. Every Sunday phone call where she asked about my week and actually listened to the answer. All of it rewritten. All of it recontextualized. All of it stained. I called in sick to work the next day. Real sick this time. Not plumbing emergency sick. Actual cannot get off the couch sick. Garrett left for the station at 6:30. I heard him moving around the kitchen making coffee. He paused outside the bedroom door for a few seconds, and I held my breath until his footsteps moved toward the garage. I stayed on the couch. I watched 4 episodes of a baking competition show where people make cakes shaped like designer shoes. I ate peanut butter out of the jar with a pretzel rod because we were out of spoons. We were not actually out of spoons. They were in the dishwasher 6 feet away, but walking 6 feet felt like crossing a desert. A different desert than the one I had been driving through for the past week. A smaller one, but somehow harder to cross. Not my finest moment. I did not shower. I did not answer Jess's texts. She sent 3. The first one said, "How did the call go?" The second one said, "Nora?" The third one said, "Okay, I am going to assume you are either dead or building a case, and I am hoping for the second one." I read all 3 and did nothing. I just lay there and thought about every holiday dinner where Judith sat at the head of the table and clinked her glass and said familia. She is not even fluent in Spanish. She took 2 semesters at community college in the 80s, but she said it like it was the most important word she knew, and maybe it was. Maybe she meant it every time she said it. Maybe that is what makes this worse than if she were just a villain. Villains are easy. You fight them and you win or you lose, and either way, you know where you stand. But a woman who means it when she says family and also forges her son's name on a deed transfer is not a villain. She is something more complicated, something that does not have a word, something that breaks you in a place you did not know could break. The thing about grief, and that is what this was, grief for a relationship that turned out to be conditional, is that it does not arrive on schedule. It does not show up when you are ready for it. It shows up at 9:45 on a Wednesday night when you are watching someone pipe buttercream onto a cake shaped like a stiletto heel and you suddenly cannot breathe. And then it got worse, because apparently the universe decided I had not had enough. That night, same night, Garrett's phone rang from the living room. I was on the couch. I could hear him through the doorway. "Hey, Mom." Pause. "What? No. What are you talking about?" Longer pause. Then his voice dropped low, the way it does when he is trying not to let me hear. "I heard anyway. I hear everything now. Betrayal does that, turns you into a satellite dish." He came into the living room 20 minutes later. He did not sit down. He stood in the doorway with his arms crossed and his jaw doing that thing, and the light from the hallway behind him making him look like a silhouette of someone I used to know. "My mom says you have been calling around about the family properties. She says you have been investigating her. She says you are trying to destroy what Dad built." There it was, Judith's countermove. The receptionist logged my call, or Brenda flagged the inquiry, or maybe Judith just felt the ground shifting beneath her and did what she always does. She picked up the phone, she called her son, she cried, and she turned the whole thing around. "She says you called a title office and pretended to be verifying a deed. She says you are being paranoid. She says you are trying to pull us apart." She was crying, Nora. My mother was crying. Of course she was crying. Judith Holbrook does not fight with fists. She fights with tears. She fights with the particular kind of vulnerability that makes her son forget that she is the one who created the problem in the first place. She has been doing this his whole life. I have watched it happen at holiday dinners. A comment about the overcooked turkey turns into Judith dabbing her eyes with a napkin, and suddenly everyone is apologizing to her, and the turkey is never mentioned again. It is masterful. It is exhausting, and tonight it was aimed directly at me. "Did she tell you about the deed transfer she signed with your forged signature?" I said. He stared at me. "What?" "Ask her about the $185,000 deed transfer on the Harmony Lane cabin, the one she signed your name on in your old handwriting, from before you hurt your finger. Ask her about that and see if she cries." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He looked like a man standing in a doorway between 2 rooms, and he did not know which one was on fire. "The documents are in the garage," I said. "In the chest freezer. You can look at them whenever you want." He did not look at them that night. He went to the bedroom and closed the door. I heard the TV turn on, ESPN. Because Garrett processes stress the same way I process home improvement observations during breakdowns, involuntarily and with terrible timing. He slept in the basement that night, not the couch in the living room where I was, the one in the basement. The one we bought at a going-out-of-business sale at a furniture store on South Broadway in 2021. It is not comfortable. It is too short for him. He is 6'1", and the couch is 6 feet, and that math does not work no matter how you position your body. I know this because I walked past the basement stairs at 3 a.m. on my way to the kitchen, and I could see his feet hanging off the end, his socks sticking out past the armrest, his face turned toward the wall. He barely spoke to me for almost 2 days. He went to work, he came home, he made pasta, he ate it standing up at the kitchen counter, which is his version of a protest. Garrett does not yell, he does not slam doors, he does not throw things or storm out. He stands at the counter and eats penne in silence, and that silence is louder than any argument I have ever been in. It fills the room, it fills the house. It gets into the walls and the carpet and the space between the couch cushions until you can feel it pressing against your skin like humidity. I was alone. Judith had neutralized my husband with a single phone call and some well-placed tears, and I was standing in my own kitchen with a freezer full of evidence and nobody to show it to. I thought about my mom in Portland. I thought about my sister in Seattle. I thought about getting in the Subaru and driving north until I ran out of gas or highway or reasons to keep going. Let Judith have whatever she wanted. Let her have the house, the properties, the debt, the wellness retreat, the stew recipe, all of it. Let her have the deed and the signature and the closing table. I was tired. I was so tired that the idea of fighting felt like trying to climb a mountain made of wet sand. At 35 years old, I have survived my parents' divorce at 14, a burst appendix at 22, a car accident that gave me whiplash for 3 weeks, a Subaru Outback with 189,000 miles and an air conditioning system with a personality disorder, and a miscarriage that I still cannot talk about without my voice cracking in a place I cannot control. I have survived all of that. This woman was not going to break me, but she came close. Those 2 days, she came so close, close enough that I could feel the edge of it, that place where you stop fighting because the cost of fighting is higher than the cost of losing. I was standing on that edge with my toes hanging over and the wind pushing me forward. And then Paige called. Thursday night, 10:22. My phone lit up on the coffee table and the name on the screen was Paige Holbrook, and I almost did not answer. I had been burned once already by Paige's 7 words and radio silence. I had called her 6 times since that Saturday text and gotten nothing but voicemail and read receipts. But something made me pick up. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the fact that I had spent 2 days alone with my evidence and my anger and my silent husband eating pasta at the counter, and I needed someone, anyone, to tell me I was not crazy. I answered, "Nora." Her voice was shaking. "I found something, and I know who Victor is. Paige, I swear to God, if you hang up on me again, I am not hanging up. Listen to me, please." Her voice was different this time. Not the careful, measured Paige who sends 3-paragraph apology texts. This Paige sounded like she had been running, or crying, or both. "I was at Mom's house last week," she said. "She asked me to help clean out the garage. It has been a mess since Dad died. Boxes everywhere, his old tools, his fishing gear. Stuff nobody has touched in 5 years. She wanted to organize it before she," and Paige paused, "before she sells." Before she sells, the words landed on me like a physical weight. She left to go to the store, said she needed packing tape. She was gone maybe 15 minutes. I was going through Dad's old toolbox, the red one, the one he kept on the workbench. I knew that toolbox. Frank used to keep it locked because he stored his good socket set in there, and he did not trust anyone else with his tools. Garrett once borrowed a wrench without asking, and Frank did not speak to him for 2 days. The Holbrook men and their silences. It runs in the family. There was a folder in the bottom, Paige said. Under the socket tray, a manila folder. I opened it because I thought it was Dad's paperwork, old receipts or insurance documents or something. She stopped. I could hear her breathing through the phone. Heavy. Shaky. "It was not Dad's," she said. "It was Mom's." She had a sheet of paper with Garrett's signature on it, over and over, like she was practicing 30, maybe 40 times on a single page. Both sides. And the handwriting changed as it went down. The first ones were shaky, too heavy. The G was too wide, but by the bottom of the page it was almost perfect. I closed my eyes. "Almost," Paige said. She never got the K right, The tail was always too long. I know, I said, because I had seen the forgery. I had held it in my hands at the Yavapai County Recorder's office, and the K was exactly what gave it away. There was something else in the folder, Paige said. A brochure, glossy, professional-looking, Sedona Serenity Wellness Retreat. Pictures of cabins and yoga platforms and women in white robes drinking smoothies on red rocks. And on the back of the brochure there was a photo of a man. And his name, Victor Engel, the business partner, the other member on the LLC, the man attached to the $280,000 that vanished from Judith's properties. He had a face now. He had a name. Nora, Paige said. I know who he is. My friend Carolyn in Flagstaff. You never met her. She is a retired teacher. Her husband died of pancreatic cancer 3 years ago. About a year after that, she met a man. He was charming, attentive. He took her to dinners. He brought her flowers. He told her he understood what it was like to lose the person you built your life with. Paige's voice cracked. He convinced Carolyn to invest $150,000 in a resort development. He showed her projections. He showed her testimonials from other investors. He had a website. He had brochures. The same brochures, Nora. The same exact ones I found in Mom's garage. Carolyn gave him the money, and 3 weeks later he was gone. Phone disconnected. Office empty. Website down. I was sitting on the edge of my bed. The room was dark. The only light was from my phone screen. I pulled court records on my phone, Paige continued. Victor Engel, 58 years old. There are 3 other women in Arizona, 3 other widows. Same pattern every time. He finds them through grief support groups or church functions or community events. He is patient. He spends months building trust. He romances them. He makes them feel seen and understood and not alone. And then he pitches the investment. And then he disappears. Total known losses across 4 women, including Carolyn. Over $600,000. $600,000. And $280,000 of that was Judith's. Mom is not just bad with money, Paige said. She got played. She got played by a professional. And now she is trying to cover it up by stealing from you and Garrett because she is too ashamed to admit what happened. The room was very quiet. I could hear the furnace running in the basement. I could hear Garrett shifting on the too short couch down there. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I took photos of everything, Paige said. The signature practice pages, the brochures, a bank statement I found underneath that showed a wire transfer to an account in Scottsdale. I did not take the physical papers because she would notice they were gone. But I have photos. 14 photos. Send them to me. I am doing it now. Nora, I am sorry I did not call sooner. She told me if I got involved, she would cut me out of the inheritance. I know that is a terrible reason. I know. But Dad built those properties and I thought maybe I could handle it from the inside. I thought I could talk to her. I thought I could convince her to stop. Her voice broke completely. She will not listen, Paige said through tears. She will not listen to anyone. She thinks Victor is coming back. She still thinks the retreat is going to work. She has his number saved in her phone with a heart emoji next to it. A heart emoji, Nora, for the man who stole her money and ruined her life. Paige, send the photos. We will figure out the rest. My phone buzzed 14 times in a row. I opened them one by one, sitting on the edge of my bed in the dark. The signature practice pages first. You could see the progression. The early attempts were shaky, uncertain. The G too wide, the pressure too heavy. By the bottom of the second page, it was almost perfect. Almost. The K tail was still too long. She never matched the post-injury pressure. She never understood that Garrett's hand moved differently after the tendon tear because she did not sit next to him while he signed 47 pages of a refinance and watch every stroke. But I did. She practiced his name like a student practicing cursive, methodical, patient. The same patience she used when she stroked my hair in the hospital and whispered, "It is going to be okay, sweetheart." I stood up, walked out of the bedroom, down the hallway, down the basement stairs. Garrett was lying on the too short couch pretending to watch ESPN with his feet hanging off the armrest and his face turned toward the wall. I held my phone in front of his face. "This is your mother's handwriting," I said, "turning into your handwriting. And this," I swiped to Victor's photo on the brochure, "is the man who took her money." Garrett sat on the edge of our bed at 11:14 that night, and he said the 4 words I had been waiting 6 days to hear. "Show me the deed." I did not make him say it twice. I walked to the garage in my socks, opened the chest freezer, moved 4 pounds of elk burger, and pulled out the manila folder that had been sitting between a bag of frozen corn and a container of green chili stew his mother had brought 5 nights earlier. The irony was not lost on me. The evidence of Judith Holbrook's fraud was literally being kept cold by Judith Holbrook's cooking. I set the folder on the kitchen table. Then I went back to the bedroom closet and pulled out a second folder, the one from my office bag. The one with 47 pages of Yavapai County records, 3 printed screenshots from the Arizona Corporation Commission, a plumber's lien for $15,800, and Jess Martinez's handwritten notes on a Thump coffee napkin. Then I opened my laptop and loaded the 14 photographs Paige had sent 4 hours earlier. I spread everything across the table like a crime scene, because that is exactly what it was. Garrett stood in the doorway for a long time. He was wearing the gray Denver Fire Department shirt he always wore to bed, the one with the small hole near the collar from a training exercise 3 years ago. His arms were crossed, his jaw was tight. He looked like a man standing at the edge of a building, deciding whether to look down. "Start from the beginning," he said. So I did. I walked him through the timeline the way I would walk a borrower through a loan estimate, calm, organized, no emotion. Just facts and numbers and dates, because emotion is what Judith had been using for 5 years, and I was not going to fight fire with fire. I was going to fight fire with spreadsheets. I started with Frank's portfolio. 2 cabins on Harmony Lane, 1 duplex on Painted Rock Drive. Combined market value approximately $780,000. Secured debt as of last week, $520,000. I showed him the refinance history, each one stacked on top of the last like Russian nesting dolls made of bad decisions. Then the missing $280,000, the wire transfer to a Scottsdale account. Sedona Serenity Wellness Retreat, a limited liability company registered 22 months ago. 1 member listed as Judith Holbrook. 1 member listed as a man named Victor Engel. No business license. No revenue. No employees. Just a glossy Facebook page with stock photos of desert sunsets and the words "Healing begins here." Then the $900 monthly withdrawals from our joint checking account. 16 months, $14,400 total. Labeled equipment maintenance on Judith's request. Garrett's face changed when I showed him that line. Not anger, something quieter, something worse. Then the pending quitclaim deed, drafted by Brenda Cosgrove's title company. Designed to add Judith as a joint tenant on our house. Our house. The one we bought together. The one with the leaky kitchen faucet and the garage freezer full of elk burger and felony evidence. Then the forged signature. I pulled out the Harmony Lane deed transfer. $185,000. Garrett's name in blue ink at the bottom. I set it next to a birthday card he had signed last Christmas. The one for his niece. "Look at the G," I said. "Look at the loop." He looked. "Now look at the tail on the K." He looked again. "You broke your right index finger in September 2022. The injury changed your grip pressure. The G-loop tightened about 30% after the break. The K-tail shortened by almost half. That deed was signed 14 months after your injury, but the handwriting matches your pre-injury signature exactly." Garrett picked up the deed. He held it close. He tilted it toward the light the way his father probably tilted a roof beam before cutting. "She practiced," he said. "Paige found the practice pages in your father's toolbox. 12 sheets of yellow legal paper. Your name written over and over, getting closer each time." He set the deed down. He did not look at me. He looked at the wall behind me, at the framed photograph of his father standing next to Engine 37 on the day he made captain. Frank Holbrook, 61 years old in that picture, with his helmet under his arm and a grin that could sell you a used truck. "And this Victor," Garrett said, "a con man, targeted at least 4 Arizona widows in the last 6 years. Carolyn and Mesa lost $150,000. Your mother lost $280,000. Total confirmed losses across all 4 victims exceed $600,000. How did Paige find him? A brochure in the toolbox. Wellness retreat. His photo was on the back. She ran a reverse image search and found a Better Business Bureau complaint from 2019. Garrett sat down. He put both hands flat on the table, palms down, fingers spread. The broken finger was slightly crooked. It always would be. "What do we do?" he said. I had been waiting for that question too. "We call a lawyer, not a family lawyer. A real estate attorney who handles fraud, forgery, and title disputes. Someone who knows Arizona property law and Colorado community property rules. Someone who can file a lis pendens to block the quitclaim deed before Brenda Cosgrove processes it." "You already have someone," Jess recommended her. "Elena Reyes, licensed in both states, 15 years of practice, office in Scottsdale with a satellite in Denver. She had a case 2 years ago involving a forged power of attorney on a Flagstaff ranch. Won a full reversal and $300,000 in damages." Garrett nodded. "Once. Slowly. Call her." I picked up my phone. It was 11:58 at night. I was not going to call an attorney at 11:58 at night, but I saved the number. I put it at the top of my contacts. And I set an alarm for 7:30 the next morning. Garrett stood up. He looked at the table one more time. Every document, every photograph, every number I had been carrying alone for 6 days while he ate pasta at the counter and watched ESPN in the basement. "I am sorry," he said. "I should have listened sooner. You are listening now." He walked to the bedroom. I stayed at the table. I closed the laptop. I stacked the folders. I put the deed back on top. Tomorrow morning at 7:30, I was going to call Elena Reyes. And by the time I finished explaining what Judith Holbrook and Victor Engel had done to this family, she was going to wish she had charged by the hour instead of the case. Elena Reyes picked up on the second ring. It was 7:32 in the morning. I had been awake since 5:45, sitting on the edge of the bathtub with my phone in one hand and a cold cup of coffee in the other, rehearsing what I was going to say. 9 years of explaining 30-year fixed-rate mortgages to people who could barely spell amortization, and I still could not figure out how to summarize my mother-in-law committing real estate fraud in under 3 minutes. "This is Elena Reyes." Her voice was calm, direct. No filler words, no warmth, and no coldness either. Just a voice that sounded like it had heard worse than whatever I was about to say, and probably before breakfast. "My name is Nora Fitzpatrick. I am a mortgage loan officer in Denver. Jess Martinez referred me. My mother-in-law forged my husband's signature on a deed transfer for $185,000, drained $280,000 from his late father's property portfolio into a fraudulent wellness retreat LLC with a con man named Victor Engel, and has a pending quitclaim deed drafted to add herself as joint tenant on our primary residence." Silence. 3 seconds. 4 seconds. "How soon can you come to my office?" she said. Elena's Denver satellite office was on the 14th floor of a building on 17th Street, 6 blocks from Union Station. The kind of building where the lobby has a waterfall and the elevator smells like someone else's success. We arrived at 9:15. Garrett wore his only collared shirt that was not a uniform. I carried 2 manila folders, my laptop, and the kind of quiet fury that makes your hands steady instead of shaky. Elena Reyes was smaller than I expected. 5'3", maybe 5'4" in the black heels she wore with a navy suit that probably cost more than our garage freezer, and everything inside it. Her office had floor-to-ceiling windows facing west toward the mountains. A single-frame degree from the University of Arizona College of Law hung on the wall next to a certificate from the State Bar of Arizona and another from the Colorado Bar. No family photos, no motivational posters. Just a large magnifying glass on a brass stand sitting on the corner of her desk, the kind you see in old detective movies. She noticed me looking at it. "My grandfather was a land surveyor in Nogales," she said. "He used that to read property boundary markers. I use it to read signatures." I liked her immediately. We sat down. I opened the first folder. I started the same way I had started with Garrett the night before. Calm, organized, no emotion. Timeline first, then documents, then photographs. Elena did not interrupt. She took notes on a yellow legal pad with a black pen. Her handwriting was small and precise, the kind of handwriting that belonged to someone who understood that details are not details. Details are the case. When I finished, she set down her pen. She pulled the magnifying glass from its stand and held it over the Harmony Lane deed transfer. She studied the signature for what felt like 2 full minutes, but was probably 45 seconds. "The G loop is wrong," she said. "I know. Pre-injury signature on a post-injury document. The forger used an older sample. Page found practice sheets in the toolbox. 12 pages of yellow legal paper. Elena set the magnifying glass down. She looked at Garrett. Your mother did this. It was not a question. Garrett nodded. And this Victor Engel. You have confirmed prior victims. 4, I said. Carolyn and Mesa lost 150,000. Total confirmed losses exceed 600,000. Elena leaned back in her chair. She folded her hands on the legal pad, and then she laid out 3 paths forward, the way a surgeon explains options before an operation. Clear, honest, no sugarcoating. Path 1, she said, civil action only. We file a lis pendens on your Denver property immediately, blocking the quitclaim deed. We petition Yavapai County Superior Court to void the forged Harmony Lane deed transfer. We pursue civil recovery against Judith Holbrook and Victor Engel for the $280,000 diverted to the LLC. Timeline: 6 to 12 months. Cost: $30,000 to $50,000 in legal fees. Likelihood of full recovery: moderate. You get your house protected and possibly some money back, but nobody goes to jail. Path 2: criminal referral. We take the forged signature, the practice sheets, the wire transfers, and the LLC records to the Yavapai County Attorney's Office. Forgery of a deed in Arizona is a Class 6 felony, up to 2 years in state prison. We also refer Victor Engel to the Arizona Attorney General for elder financial exploitation across multiple victims. Timeline for charges: 3 to 9 months. You do not control the prosecution. The county attorney decides whether to file. Judith could face prison time. She paused. She looked at Garrett again, not with sympathy, not with judgment, with the steady gaze of someone who had sat across from 100 people at this exact moment and understood what it cost. Path 3: both, civil and criminal simultaneously. We protect your property and pursue recovery while law enforcement investigates the fraud and the con man. This is the most comprehensive option. It is also the most expensive, the most time-consuming, and the most painful, because once you file a criminal referral against your own mother, there is no version of Thanksgiving that looks the same. The room was quiet. 17th Street traffic hummed 14 floors below. I could hear the building's ventilation system pushing air through a vent above the window. Garrett looked at me. I looked at him. We had been married for 8 years. We had survived a car accident, a miscarriage, a leaky kitchen faucet that took 4 months to fix, and 6 days of silence over pasta and ESPN. I knew what he was going to say before he said it. Path 3. Elena nodded. She picked up her pen. I will draft the lis pendens today. Filing tomorrow morning. I will also prepare the criminal referral packet. I need you to sign authorization forms for both. And I need one more thing. What? I said. The original documents. Not copies. Originals. I looked at Garrett. They are in the garage freezer, I said, on top of 4 pounds of elk burger. Elena Reyes did not blink. She wrote something on her legal pad, and I would have given $100 to know if it said freezer or these people are insane. Bring them to me by 5 o'clock today, she said, and do not tell Judith anything. Not a word, not a text, not a look. From this moment forward, every interaction with your mother-in-law is potential evidence. We stood up. We shook hands. Garrett and I walked to the elevator in silence. The doors closed. He pressed the lobby button. And somewhere between the 14th floor and the 8th, he reached over and took my hand. He had not done that in 6 days. We drove home from Elena's office in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than the one that had filled our house for the past 6 days. That silence had been cold, empty. The silence of 2 people standing on opposite sides of a wall neither one of them had built. This silence was warm, full. The silence of 2 people who had finally agreed on which direction to walk. Garrett kept his hand on mine until we pulled into the driveway. The first thing I did when we got inside was walk to the garage. I opened the chest freezer. I moved the elk burger. I pulled out the manila folder. The edges of the paper were slightly damp from condensation, and the whole thing smelled faintly of frozen corn and green chile. I held it at arm's length and carried it to the kitchen counter. I cannot believe our legal defense smells like your mother's stew, I said. Garrett almost smiled. Almost. I drove the originals to Elena's office alone. Garrett stayed home. I think he needed the house to be quiet for a while, the way a room needs to breathe after you open all the windows. I dropped off the folder at 4:22, 38 minutes before the deadline. Elena's paralegal, A young woman named Dana with reading glasses and a pen behind her ear signed a chain of custody receipt and placed everything in a fireproof cabinet. "She will call you tomorrow," Dana said. Elena called at 8:19 the next morning. "The Liz Pendens has been filed with the Denver County Clerk and Recorder," she said. "As of 9:01 this morning, no deed, mortgage, lien, or encumbrance can be recorded against your property at 4712 Birch Hollow Drive without court approval. Your house is locked." I sat down on the kitchen floor, not because I was falling, because something inside me had been standing on the tips of its toes for 7 days, and it finally had permission to come down. "What about the quitclaim deed?" I said. I contacted Brenda Cosgrove's office at 7:45 this morning. I informed her that any attempt to record the pending quitclaim deed would constitute knowing facilitation of a fraudulent conveyance and could result in personal liability, loss of her title agent license, and a referral to the Arizona Department of Insurance and Financial Institutions. The deed has been withdrawn. She just withdrew it. She withdrew it in 11 minutes, which tells me she knew exactly what she was processing and had been waiting for someone to give her a legal reason to stop. 11 minutes. Brenda Cosgrove had been sitting on a forged deed for weeks, maybe months, and all it took was one phone call from a 5'3" attorney with a magnifying glass on her desk to make it disappear. I wanted to be angry at Brenda. I was. But I was also angry at a system that let a document like that get drafted in the first place without a single verification call to the person whose name was being added. That was Wednesday. On Thursday, Elena filed the civil petition in Yavapai County Superior Court to void the forged Harmony Lane deed transfer. The petition named Judith Holbrook as the primary defendant and cited forgery of a real property instrument under Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 13, 2002, Class 6 felony, up to 2 years. On Friday, Elena submitted the criminal referral packet to the Yavapai County Attorney's Office. The packet included the forged deed, pages 14 photographs of the practice sheets, the signature comparison showing pre-injury versus post-injury handwriting, the LLC registration for Sedona Serenity Wellness Retreat, wire transfer records to the Scottsdale account, and a 3-page summary I had written at 2 in the morning because I could not sleep and writing felt better than staring at the ceiling. The county attorney's office assigned a detective. A 14-day investigation window opened. On Saturday, Elena filed a separate complaint with the Arizona Attorney General's office regarding Victor Engel, 4 confirmed victims, over $600,000 in total losses. A pattern of targeting recently widowed women through wellness retreat schemes, romance, financial entanglement, then disappearance. The AG's office confirmed receipt and assigned a case number. 4 filings in 4 days. Liz Pendens. Quitclaim withdrawn. Civil petition. Criminal referral. Each one a lock on a different door, and each door led to the same room where Judith Holbrook and Victor Engel had been operating in the dark for 5 years. I kept a spreadsheet. Column A was the filing. Column B was the date. Column C was the status. Column D was what I called the feeling, though I never told anyone that. Wednesday's feeling was relief. Thursday's was grim satisfaction. Friday's was nausea, because filing a criminal referral against your mother-in-law is not something you celebrate. Saturday's was numbness. Garrett watched me update the spreadsheet Saturday night. He was leaning against the kitchen doorframe with a glass of water, and he looked at the screen for a long time. "You built a case in 6 days," he said. 7, I said. "I do not count the day I spent on the couch watching a baking show." "Nora." "What?" "Thank you." I closed the laptop. I looked at him, the man who had eaten silent pasta for 3 days, the man who had let his mother take $900 a month from our checking account because she said I would overreact, the man who had chosen Path 3 without hesitation when it mattered. "Do not thank me yet," I said. "We still have 14 days before the detective reports, and your mother does not know any of this is happening. She will find out." "When?" "When Elena decides it is time, not before." Garrett set his glass in the sink. He turned off the kitchen light, and he said something that surprised me more than anything else in the past 7 days. "I called Paige tonight. I thanked her for the photos." I stood in the dark kitchen for a moment after he walked away. Garrett had called his sister. He had thanked her for helping expose their own mother. That was not a small thing. That was a man choosing truth over comfort, family over bloodline, and the future over the past. The 14-day clock was ticking. Somewhere in Sedona, Judith Holbrook was probably watering her herb garden and wondering why Brenda Cosgrove had not returned her calls. And somewhere else, in whatever city Victor Engel had moved to next, a man with a brochure and a talent for lonely women was running out of time. I set my alarm for 6:30. Tomorrow was Sunday. I was going to sleep in an extra hour. I had earned it. The detective called on a Tuesday. 14 days exactly. Elena conferenced me in at 10:08 in the morning. I was sitting in my office at work, pretending to review a refinance application for a couple in Lakewood, when her name appeared on my phone screen. I closed my door. I sat down. I pressed accept. The Yavapai County attorney has filed charges, Elena said. Forgery of a real property instrument, Class 6 felony. Judith Holbrook will be served at her Sedona residence within 72 hours. I did not say anything. I had spent 14 days imagining this moment. I had imagined relief. I had imagined satisfaction. I had imagined standing up from my desk and walking to the window and feeling like someone who had won something. Instead, I felt like I was holding a glass that was already cracked, and the crack had just reached the bottom. There is more, Elena said. The Arizona Attorney General executed a search warrant on Victor Engel's Scottsdale apartment yesterday morning. They seized 2 laptops, a file cabinet containing records from 6 separate victims, not 4, 6, and approximately $43,000 in cash. He was arrested at a gas station in Fountain Hills at 2:17 in the afternoon. He is being held on multiple counts of theft, fraud, and financial exploitation of vulnerable adults. 6 victims, not 4. Victor Engel had been doing this longer than any of us knew, and the 2 additional women had never reported him because they were too ashamed. I learned that later from Elena. Too ashamed to tell their children that a man they thought loved them had taken everything their husbands had left behind. I called Garrett from the parking lot during my lunch break. He answered on the first ring. They filed charges, I said. He was quiet for a long time, long enough that I checked my phone to make sure the call was still connected. When will she know? He said. Within 72 hours. Elena said they will serve her at the house. I should be there. Elena says no. Absolutely not. No contact until after she is served. Anything you say could be used to argue we influenced or intimidated her. She is my mother. Nora. I know. I should be there when she finds out her son filed charges against her. Garrett, listen to me. You did not file charges. The county attorney filed charges based on evidence of a felony. You reported a crime. There is a difference. It does not feel like a difference. No, it did not. And I was not going to pretend that it did, because I had spent 14 days watching my husband carry something heavier than a burning roof beam, and the weight had not come from the fraud. The weight had come from the fact that he loved his mother, and his mother had forged his name, and both of those things were true at the same time. Judith was served on a Thursday afternoon at 3:45. Paige called us 20 minutes later. She was crying. Mom opened the door and the man handed her the papers, and she just stood there, Paige said. She stood in the doorway for, I do not know how long, maybe 5 minutes. Then she walked inside and sat down at the kitchen table, and she did not move. Is she alone? Garrett said. I am here. I drove over when she called me. She is not talking. She is just sitting. Do not let her call anyone, especially not Victor. Victor was arrested 2 days ago, Garrett. I know, but she does not know that. Judith called Garrett 3 hours later. I was sitting next to him on the couch. He put the phone on speaker. Elena had told us to record all calls from this point forward, and I had my phone open with the voice memo running. Judith's voice was small. Smaller than I had ever heard it. This was a woman who once argued with a car mechanic for 45 minutes over a $12 oil filter. A woman who corrected waiters on their Spanish pronunciation. A woman who made green chili stew from scratch at 1 in the morning and drove it across the city without calling first. I did not mean for it to go this far, she said. Garrett closed his eyes. He said the retreat would make money. He said we would pay everything back in 2 years. He showed me projections, spreadsheets. He had a website. He had testimonials from other investors. I thought I was building something for you and Paige, something your father would have been proud of. Dad would not have been proud of this, Garrett said. His voice was steady, but I could see his hand shaking on his knee. I know. You forged my signature, Mom. Silence. You practiced my handwriting on 12 sheets of legal paper. You kept them in Dad's toolbox like they were nothing. You transferred $185,000 using my name without my knowledge. You took $900 a month from our checking account and told me Nora would overreact if she found out, and you were going to put your name on our house. I was going to pay it back. With what? The LLC has no revenue. The retreat does not exist. Victor took everything. I did not know that. You did not want to know that. I sat next to my husband and I watched him say the hardest things he had ever said to the woman who raised him. He did not yell. He did not curse. He did not hang up. He spoke the way his father probably spoke when he walked into a burning building. Calm, clear, moving forward because the only alternative was standing still and letting everything collapse. The call lasted 19 minutes. Judith cried for most of it. She explained how Victor had approached her at a grief support group in Sedona 8 months after Frank's death, how he had been kind, passionate, attentive, how he had talked about his own late wife, a story that turned out to be completely fabricated, how the business partnership had started with small investments and grown into something she could not control and could not admit. She never said the word sorry. She said, "I did not mean to" 4 times. She said, "Your father" 6 times. She said "that man" when she meant Victor, as if his name had become something she could not hold in her mouth. When the call ended, Garrett set his phone on the coffee table. He leaned forward. He put his face in his hands. I put my hand on his back. We stayed like that for a long time. 3 months later, on a Saturday morning in October, I stood in our garage and stared at the chest freezer. It was empty. Not because we had eaten everything inside it, because we had bought a new one, a bigger one, stainless steel, with a digital temperature display and a lock that required an actual key, which Garrett thought was ridiculous and I thought was poetic. The old freezer, the one that had held 4 pounds of elk burger, a container of green chili stew, and 14 pages of felony evidence, was sitting in the driveway with a free sign taped to the lid. A neighbor named Phil took it before noon. He said he was going to use it for fish. I wished him well and did not mention that the last thing stored inside it had a Yavapai County case number. Here is what happened in those 3 months. Elena Reyes filed the civil petition to void the forged Harmony Lane deed. The Yavapai County Superior Court granted a temporary restraining order within 9 days, freezing all transactions on Judith's 4 properties. 3 weeks later, the court voided the deed transfer entirely. $185,000 in fraudulent equity, erased with a judge's signature, the real one this time. The criminal case moved slower, the way criminal cases always do. Judith was arraigned on 1 count of forgery of a real property instrument, Class 6 felony. Her attorney negotiated. Elena kept us informed but reminded us that the prosecution was no longer in our hands. It belonged to the state of Arizona now. Judith pleaded no contest. She received 3 years of supervised probation, 400 hours of community service, mandatory financial counseling, and an order of restitution totaling $31,200. She would not go to prison, but she would spend the next 3 years explaining to a probation officer why she forged her son's name on a property document, and that, in its own way, was a kind of sentence too. Victor Engel did not get probation. The Arizona Attorney General's office charged him with 11 counts across 6 victims: theft, fraud, financial exploitation of vulnerable adults, forgery, money laundering through the Sedona Serenity Wellness Retreat, LLC. His trial was scheduled for January, but in November he accepted a plea deal: 8 years in the Arizona Department of Corrections. Restitution ordered at $412,000, though Elena told us privately that most of that money was gone and the victims would be lucky to recover 20 cents on the dollar. Carolyn in Mesa got a letter from the AG's office. She called Paige and cried for 30 minutes, not because of the money, because someone had finally believed her. The properties were liquidated. The 2 Harmony Lane cabins sold at auction for a combined $341,000. The Painted Rock Drive duplex sold for $218,000. After the secured debts were paid, the contractor lien was settled, the back taxes and insurance penalties were cleared, and Elena's legal fees were subtracted. There was $31,200 left. That was Judith's entire remaining share of the estate Frank Holbrook had spent 40 years building. $31,200, the same number as her restitution. Every dollar she had left was owed to the court. Garrett and I refinanced our house, just the two of us. Our names, our signatures, our mortgage. Elena supervised the closing to make sure every document was clean, and when I signed the last page, she looked at me and said, "You would have made a good attorney." I told her I preferred working with numbers that did not require a magnifying glass. Paige and Garrett talk every Sunday now. That started the week after Judith was served, and it has not stopped. They talk about their father mostly, about the firehouse, about the time Frank burned Thanksgiving turkey so badly the smoke alarm woke up the neighbor's dog, about how he would have handled all of this, and whether he would have been angry or heartbroken or both. I think he would have been both, but I think he would have been proud of his son for choosing the truth. Judith and Garrett have not spoken since the phone call. Maybe they will someday. Maybe they will not. That is not my decision to make, and I have learned in the past 3 months that the decisions that are not yours to make are the ones you have to let go of first. I think about that drive on I-25 more than I probably should. The desert stretching in every direction. The semi-truck that blew past us when we pulled over. The way Garrett looked at me when I told him to turn around, like I was being dramatic, like I was overreacting, like this was just another Nora moment where I read too much into a text message. But here is what I know now. I was not overreacting. I was doing my job. Not my job as a mortgage loan officer, though that helped. My job as a wife. My job as a partner. My job as the person who promised to protect this family, even when the threat came from inside it. One text message. One moment on the side of a highway. One decision to turn around instead of driving forward into something that would have cost us our home. That is all it took. If you are listening to this and something feels wrong, trust that feeling. You do not need a magnifying glass. You do not need 14 pages of county records. You do not need a 5'3" attorney with a grandfather's land surveying tool on her desk. You just need the courage to say the words out loud. Pull over. Look closer. And do not let anyone tell you that you are overreacting. Because sometimes the person who overreacts is the only person paying attention. Garrett is in the garage right now, by the way. He is setting up the new freezer. The stainless steel one with the digital display and the lock. He just yelled something through the door, and I am going to end this story by telling you exactly what he said, because after everything we have been through, after the forged signatures and the felony charges and the 19-minute phone call and the green chile stew at 1 a.m, this is the sentence that made me laugh for the first time in 3 months. He said, "Hey Nora, the old freezer earned its retirement, but this new one, this one is strictly for elk burger. No felonies allowed." I love that man. And if you made it this far, thank you for listening. If this story helped you or reminded you to trust yourself, hit that subscribe button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment telling me about a time you trusted your gut and it saved you. I will be here, reading every single one.